Drawing together. 12,000 years. The words had struck Fukin like an artillery bombardment. After the young woman, Tara, she called herself, had led him to the nearest mess hall to rest, he had said little as the words had sunk in. 12,000 years. These people were good people, that much he could tell. Tara's kindness was beyond anything he had seen in millennia, and even if her companions were rather confused, they certainly meant well. The Medici and her psyker companion had gone and brought him a drink, the comically small cup resting in Fukin's hand as he contemplated what his next steps would be. We are far from the Imperium, with little communication and no knowledge if my father still lives. I cannot lose hope, but this will not end well for many aboard this vessel. He heard a shift from ahead. Fukin looked up, spotting Tara speaking to a man dressed in black and silver robes. Fukin could not hear their conversation, but he could easily guess that it was directed at him and the manner of which he had come aboard the ship. Tara seemed to have authority in this situation, for the man made no real effort to interrupt or direct her as their conversation continued. She was truly a fascinating woman. What might her role in all this be, I wonder? Finally the two turned, crossing over to Fukin as the Primarch did his best to sit up straighter. Tara took a seat across from him while the man found an empty space further down. Is everything okay? Tara asked. I suppose, Fukin replied. Not military, she appears too loose for such a role. Apologies if I am appearing hesitant. All that has happened has left me with many questions. Just take your time, Tara said, giving Fukin a smile before shifting towards her companion. This is Mash's. He's the commander of the ship and a member of the Inquisition. He'll be able to help with any questions I might not be able to answer. Fukin nodded, though if the Inquisition had not shaken the zealotry that had been creeping in last time he spoke with their representatives. No, that is thinking of darker times. If they prove themselves to be trustworthy, their help should not be discounted solely on their beliefs. I suppose my first question is the most pressing on my mind, Fukin started. What has happened to my father? I presume you mean the Empire. The Emperor, the Inquisitor asked. Fukin nodded before the man continued. In the closing years of M.41, an army of traitors broke from the Eye of Terror and lay siege to Terra. The Emperor rose from the Golden Throne to throw back the heretics and ascended to battle the gods of chaos on their own level. M.41, Fukin repeated. That would be about 5,000 years ago, give or take, no? Then I presume he has acted to restore the Imperium. Well, sort of, Tara continued. The Emperor did not return from the warp until a few years ago, and, there was a pause, both Tara and Masha's exchanging awkward glances before looking back to Fukin. Well, she is the Empress of mankind now. Empress. Fukin blinked, working his jaw as he tried to make sense of the revelation. I have heard many strange things before, but that is by far the strangest of them all. Do not be offended if I say I do not wholly believe you at this time. If it's a matter of Tara started before catching herself. She chewed her lip, her hand flexing before she spoke again. No, it's all right. You have been gone for some time. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound too harsh. I can see your intentions are in the right place, young Tara, Fukin replied. As perhaps you have stood in this Empress presence, you have a better understanding of who she is than I do. Perhaps when we return to civilization, I too might stand before her and see for myself. Therein lies our problem, Mashas replied. Our ship was crippled in battle when we were rescuing you. We have been unable to reach any forces for rescue, friendly or otherwise. And my attempts at contacting the Empress haven't been lucky either. Tara said. This drew a raised eyebrow from Fukin. You know this Empress personally, then, he asked. Tara fidgeted, looking about as one who had perhaps spoken too much. She's my mentor, she said quietly, looking away for a moment. I understand things were different in your time, but I'm not Then she is already a better ruler than my father ever was, Fukin said, drawing surprised looks from the two before him. You are surprised? The Emperor was many things, strong in mind and body, charismatic, all the characteristics of a great leader, save for one thing. He did not always make time for the common man, to speak with and help those that were left wanting after his armies had passed through. I always did what I could not stand to see the citizens of the Imperium suffering, but often I felt my concerns fell on deaf ears. Fukin looked away. To hear that the current regime has taken such measures, even that this Empress has taken a student from among the masses, gives me hope for the future. Oh, Tara started, pursing her lips before continuing. Well then, I'm sure she'd be happy to hear about your, observations when we meet. No malice. The girl is just nervous, an odd choice for a student. I look forward to such a meeting, Fukin replied. Now, what enemy do we face this day? A creature of the warp that calls itself the Dark God, Mashes continued. The forces of chaos are a bit out of my purview, but the Empress has taken action to counter its attacks. As far as you know, though, Fukin countered, looking to Mashes before continuing. You have said you have not had the chance to contact your Empress, for one reason or another. I do not wish to sound fatalistic, but do you really know what has happened in this new war? We don't, Tara replied, drawing Fukin's attention back to her. It may be that things have gone bad, and we're too far away to stem the tide before it grows to be too much. But regardless of what we are facing, we are not going to back down. Even if we have to take on the entire galaxy by ourselves, the Imperium and humanity are still worth fighting for. That is admirable. A pause as Fukin mulled over the girl's words. Maybe the people of the Imperium had fallen more towards zealotry, but there was an earnestness in Tara's words that felt comforting. Very well. If your intention is to save the Imperium, it would be folly of me not to assist you in your endeavors. Oh, good, Tara said quickly, drawing a raised eyebrow from both Fukin and the Inquisitor. Sorry, I was just expecting you to have some prerequisite to agreeing to help us, like asking to speak to the Empress first or holding us hostage for a month or something. I dread to learn why you would think the latter would occur, Fukin said. I do not wish to sound rude, but perhaps I may have some time alone? There is quite a lot I must think over to prepare myself for this new world. Take all the time you need, Tara said, giving Fukin another smile before rising. If you need to talk to anyone, we'll be here for you. Mashes. The Inquisitor nodded, rising and following after Tara as the two departed. Fukin could hear their conversation drifting away as they disappeared, but he felt no need to listen in on them further. The Imperium had changed, but within its borders there were still those unwilling to leave it for dead. That was something he could work with. Twilight stretched as much as her armor would allow her, the plates clicking together as she rolled her shoulders back. Training sessions had slacked as need for repairs had risen aboard the ship, but Naomi had been insistent on keeping them all in shape for when they returned to the Imperium. It had been the first Twilight had participated in since Mir Shen's death. It felt good to get back in the swing of things. Tara. Twilight was shaken from her thoughts by Ruth, the sister looking up from where she and the others had been cleaning their weapons. You spoke with Lord Fukin, yes? Well, not recently, Twilight replied. It had been almost a week since the Primarch had awoken, and for such a great man he was very good at staying out of sight. I don't want to be too intrusive as he settles in. It has been 12,000 years since he ended up in that coffin in the first place. Though it would be nice if he explained how he got in there. Oh, the sister seemed to deflate at that. I had hoped that perhaps you had gleaned some wisdom of older times from him. I mean, that which you have not already learned from the Empress, of course. I saw him briefly just the other day, in the forge, Veronica offered, setting aside her bolter before continuing. I thought it would be rude if I just stared and said nothing, so I introduced myself and asked if there was anything I could bring him. He just thanked me and sent me away, though. Veronica furrowed her brow. He seemed apprehensive. You noticed that too? Twilight asked. When Veronica nodded, Twilight continued. When we first met, he seemed more interested in what I had to say rather than what Mashes did. I can kind of understand that since I read up on it later and Fukin disappeared long before the Ordo Xenos was formed, but it was not like Mashes was being too harsh or questioning. Such instances are usually not instinctive, Naomi said, coming over to inspect her girl's work. I have dealt with many inquisitors, good and bad, over the course of my life. I have come to see all of them with suspicion unless persuaded otherwise. Perhaps Lord Fukin has had similar experiences. Well, then perhaps our task can be to show him that he is mistaken in his fear, Judith chirped, her eyes falling to Frederick before her face lit up. Maybe we can show him the elements? Perhaps he knows of them from the past and has some hidden knowledge that can help us in our quest. That's highly unlikely, Twilight countered. Judith paused before giving a shrug of agreement, turning her attention back to Naomi as the Sister Superior finished her inspection. Good work on your drills today, girls, she said. Tomorrow I will see if Lord Mashes will release us for sparring sessions. For now, go store your weapons and then report to Mugos Eril for further instructions. Yes, Sister Naomi, the four sisters chorused, turning to leave as Naomi focused on Twilight. Will you be joining us today? She asked. In a little bit, Twilight replied, unclamping her sword from her hip. I wanted to get a few more exercises in, then I was going to try and contact the Empress again. I'll catch up with you after that. I see. Naomi said. There was a pause before the sisters spoke again. How are you handling Lord Fukin's return? Twilight's heart sank, but only just. Yes, it was good that a new Primarch had been found, and Fukin had spoken well to her and Mashes when they had seen him last. But I've managed, Twilight said finally, allowing herself to relax. Fukin will help us, that much I know, but, well, I'd be lying if I said that seeing him doesn't make me think of Mirshen, and sometimes I wish he'd come back rather than Fukin. There are times where I wished I had fallen on Moria rather than Canonis Diana, Naomi replied, nodding her head in agreement. This too shall pass, and as Lord Fukin opens up to you I am sure you can put this unease to rest. I know, a pause before Naomi turned to leave. Come speak with me when you are finished up here, she said as she stepped through the door. Some tea and quiet reflection could do you well, I believe. Twilight nodded, turning away from Naomi as she brought her sword around in front of her. She took a deep breath, sliding into the various stances of Sigismund's treatises as she milled over the discussion she had with the sisters, and those she had had with Fukin. They mean well, but I just don't think Fukin is ready to integrate that much, she thought, stopping her drill for a moment as another thought came to mind. Or maybe you're the one who isn't ready to move on. Maybe you're just trying to hold everything close to what it was before. Perhaps the thought was harsh, but Twilight knew it would linger until she was back in the company of others again. She continued her drills until she heard footsteps outside. Twilight stopped, turning towards the entrance as she spotted Fukin standing outside, the Primarch hesitating for a moment before stepping into the training room. Miss Terra, I hope I am not interrupting anything. Oh no, of course not, Twilight said quickly, putting her sword down as she continued. I was just practicing a little, nothing more. A pause as she looked up at Fukin. Is there anything I can help you with? Perhaps. Fukin stepped further into the room, crossing to Twilight before continuing. I have seen some of your companions about in the ship. Who are they? Companions? Twilight asked. You mean the sisters? Is that what they call themselves? Fukin asked. Sorry, but in my time the only sisters I knew of were those whom my father had tasked with bringing in and destroying rogue psychers and the like. These girls seem far more open than what I remember. They're getting better, Twilight said. When I first met them, they were much more reserved around me, as if I was some kind of relic that could be damaged if they spoke too freely or harshly towards me. I see. Fukin looked away, his eyes darting across the room as if searching for some unseen foe. Twilight frowned before she spoke again. Is there something wrong with them? She asked. I notice that you've been a bit standoffish when it comes to some of the things around here. You have a sharp eye, Terra, Fukin said, shifting so he was now seated before her, Twilight taking a seat of her own as he continued. When I last walked among mortals, I had seen signs that the Imperium was forgetting itself. Fact was falling to myth, reason falling to zealotry. To see that it has taken more root than I could have possibly imagined is rather distressing. They mean well, Fukin, Twilight said, resting her hand on one of the Primarch's knee pads. Yes, it can be confusing and frustrating at times, but their faith in the Empress and the Imperium has led them to do great things. I am sure the Primarch sighed. I suppose it is old melancholy rising up. The Imperium has moved further afield than I can remember, and I wonder if I still have a place in all this, that I am still needed. I think so, Twilight said, offering a small smile. I did not mention this, but a number of your fellow Primarches have returned as well. Oh? Who? Corax was the first, and the lion followed after him. They've had their own trials, but I like to think they've grown into their roles again. The lion? Fukin asked, looking away for a moment before continuing. Johnson was rather obstinate, so I cannot imagine the hassle it must have taken to keep him under control. That's why I was so worried about bringing you in, Twilight continued. He threatened to kill an entire fleet's worth of soldiers if we couldn't convince him the Empress was who she said she was. That does seem to be his manner of dealing with such problems. Fukin replied. From what little you have told me, your Empress continues to intrigue me. There was a pause before Fukin looked back to Twilight. Miss Terra, when you first saw me you mentioned a name, Mir Shen. Twilight's expression dropped, but not enough that her composure broke completely. I didn't think you heard me. I hear many things, though perhaps my hearing is not as sharp as the Khan's or Corax's. Fukin replied. Mir Shen. That is an old name from Nocturne. I presume he was one of my sons. Yes, Twilight answered. Mir Shen came with us when we went to find your coffin. He was my friend, a good man who listened to what I said and came to my aid when I was in crisis. Twilight choked, trying to push past the image of the daemon striking Mir Shen as she looked to Fukin. He was killed just before we escaped. I see. Fukin said, his voice soft. I am truly sorry for your loss. Thank you. It really means a lot to me. Twilight looked down before continuing. I'm not from a violent or harsh world, and sometimes I've been caught off guard by how cruel this galaxy can be. Having someone who was there to help me and comfort me during my time here. Well, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it weren't for him. It is good to hear at least some things have not changed, Fukin said, giving a short nod as he continued. I did my best to teach my sons humility, never to take for granted where they had come from and who they stood to defend. If we lose that, can we even call ourselves human? Mir Shen said much the same when I first met him. I'm glad there are others out there that hold those beliefs. There was a pause, Twilight looking up to Fukin as the Primarch mulled over her words. When it seemed he did not have much more to say, Twilight rose to her feet. I have other duties to attend to, but if you would like we can talk more later. Before you leave, Miss Terra, Fukin said. Might I have a closer look at your armor? Oh, of course. Twilight stepped towards Fukin, offering her arm as the Primarch inspected the armor. He ran his hand across the metal, eyes darting across minute imperfections that not even Twilight could see. It is quite beautiful workmanship, he mused, releasing Twilight's arm before continuing. I can definitely see some of my father's handiwork in the weave. Your tale of this Empress being the Emperor reborn carries more weight with each passing day. I see another pause, Fukin looking away from Twilight before he too rose to face her. If your duties permit you, and if it would not be too much of a bother, would you mind if I inspected your armor more closely? Perhaps there are some modifications I can make in thanks for your rescue. Oh, Twilight drew back, brushing her hand across her arm. I don't want you to feel obligated for anything. Please, I insist. You have done me a great service already, it is only fitting that I repay the favor. Twilight hesitated again, her eyes darting between her armor and the Primarch. The chances that she would need it for active combat were slim, but it was still a comforting presence that she could not give up so easily. But, if it would help him settle in more. Well, okay, Twilight answered, giving a short nod as she continued. Okay. Bring your armor down to the forge when you are able. Fukin said, giving Twilight a quick smile. I will need some time and a chance to talk to your friend to get the tools I may need, but I promise you I will provide you with a gift worthy of the kindness you have shown me. Twilight nodded, turning to leave before Fukin spoke. And Terra. Yes, she asked, turning back to Fukin. Thank you once more, for showing me that hope still remains in this galaxy. All preparations are set? Mashes asked. He could have sworn the monitor in the communications alcove had started to wear down from the number of times he had leaned against it, but exhaustion forced worries of cosmetic wear away from his mind. Final preparations have been completed, Lord Velas, Mugos Eril spoke through the Vox. I have directed the machine spirit to ensure that additional power is in place should our initial inputs be insufficient. Good. Mashes massaged his face, taking a deep breath as he watched the monitor. Empress, we have tested this many times, please, let this come through. Open comms and activate the distress beacon. There was a pause, a burst of static following as Eril temporarily broke contact. The pause lengthened to a minute, and Mashes was prepared to hail the Mugos once more before they got a response. One single ping, followed by an echo. Thank you. Mugos Eril, Mashes said, allowing a smile to break across his face. I have a response. The distress beacon is activated. Confirmed. The machine spirit is following available paths, though its signal is weak. I will explore to see if there are other routes that may be open to allow for a stronger signal. I will leave you to your work, then. Mashes said, backing up from the monitor before continuing. Bring me a full diagnostic when you are finished, and let me know how best I can deploy personnel for your assistance. Eril did not reply, but his silence was answer enough. The distress beacon would reach further, and perhaps soon they could reach a passing ship or nearby star system and get some help, and hopefully not draw attention from any of the Imperium's enemies. At least the Empress has blessed us with one step forward. Mashes was prepared to leave when he received another hail, this time from the command bridge. Lord Velas, the voice called through. We are detecting signatures indicating warp exit. What? Have our enemies found us? Mashes quickly crossed to the monitor, keying in a command to give him a view of the outside. Do we have visual yet? Negative. Available sensors will need more time to, wait, visual spotted. Transmitting you the information now. There was a pause before the screen changed. The image was scratchy, but there was no denying Masha's vision as a strike cruiser and escorts broke from warp space, the ships moving up before coming to a stop. Can you get a better image? He asked, trying to adjust to better identify the vessel. Negative, Lord Velas. The ships appear to be holding position, and at this range there is only so much our sensors can do. If they intend to attack us, they will be able to get ideal firing positions without us being able to respond. Then let's hope they don't realize we are still alive, if battle is what they seek. Mashes mulled over his options. Calling the crew to battle stations would prepare them for an attack, but it would also give the newcomers ample warning that the Sanguinium Martyrs was still active. And give them all the more reason to stay back and bombard us from afar. My lord, the vessels appear to be hailing us, the bridge said. They are identifying themselves as Strike Cruiser Sword of Redemption, Ordo Malleus. They wish to speak to you. Daemon Hunters, Mashes breathed, his hands tightening. They must have been drawn by our warp exit. A pause, Mashes trying to release some of the tension in his hands to no avail. At least they haven't fired on us, yet. Perhaps the Empress still smiles on us this day. Very well. Open comms, I shall speak to them. Another pause, the grainy image of the ships replaced by the grainy image of a woman. This is Lady Inquisitor Olivier of the Ordo Malleus, she said, her voice choppy from static. Not only was it the Ordo Malleus, but a Lady Inquisitor as well. What forces are around here that someone that high-ranking had to respond? Identify yourself, vessel. This is the Sanguinium Martyrs, Mashes Velas of the Ordo Xenos responding. Mashes replied, keeping his voice even. I am afraid you have come at a most inconvenient time, Lady Olivier. We must always rise up to the task presented to us, regardless of the circumstances, Lady Olivier replied. What brought you to this? Our ship was caught between Xenos and heretical forces. Our warp engines were damaged, among other equipment, and we have been stranded out here for the better part of a month. I see. Hesitation. There was more the Inquisitor was not telling him. No matter. Fortunately, your deliverance is at hand, the Empress herself tasked me with locating your vessel, and her student above all else. Mashes said nothing, allowing the Lady Inquisitor to continue speaking. Is the student Terra still alive? Lady Terra is alive. There was a lengthy pause. Through the static Mashes could not pick out much, but the Lady Inquisitor's hesitation was intriguing. Resentment at the assignment? Unlikely. Perhaps something more personal. Believe me, Lord Velas, I would like to trust you in this matter, Lady Olivier said. But I need assurances that she is well. When I have those assurances, I will be able to help you and your fellows fully. I would call her up to speak with you through comms, Mashes offered. But from your tone I gather that won't be enough to satiate your concerns. Not in these times. Send a shuttle to my ship, I would like to speak with the student myself and ensure she is well. Trap. As the Empress has entrusted her to me during our mission, I cannot release her into your care at this time. Unfortunately, you are not in any position to bargain with me, Lord Velas. Lady Olivier replied. I did not come here to fight, my friend, I was sent by the Empress and I truly do wish for us to work together in our endeavors, but you must understand that precautions must be made when a ship thought lost suddenly reappears in the middle of space. And you must understand that I cannot allow anything to befall the student while she is under my care, Mashes countered. There was a lengthy pause before he continued. I will be with her when you speak to her. If you attempt to cause her any harm, you won't be able to escape me. It will not come to that. I will make arrangements for your arrival. With that the communication closed out, leaving Mashes alone. While the Ordo Malleus had not stepped in to try and take Terra by force, their insistence on speaking to her directly could only lead to more conflict. And then there's whatever Lady Olivier isn't telling me about her mission. Bridge, he said. Have a transport prepped for launch, and have Terra, the sisters, and the Valhallans meet me there for briefing.